Hello and welcome to our School of Social and Political Sciences live Masters Q&A. We're excited to have you here. My name's Gabby and I'm part of the student recruitment team here at the School of Social and Political Sciences at the University of Glasgow. We're delighted to be joined today by some of our inspiring postgraduate students from around the world who are all studying one-year master's programs within social and political sciences. They're here today to share their experiences of their master's journey with you from first arriving in Glasgow through their first and second semesters and into what comes next. So I'm ready to now introduce our wonderful students. Well, I'll hand over to them to introduce themselves. So we'll begin with Liza. Welcome, Liza. How are you? I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and what program you're
Hi, Gabby.
studying. Hi
I'm
there.
having issues hearing you at the moment. I do apologize. I couldn't hear the question that you just asked me.
All right, I'll just repeat it. So are you able to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, what you're studying and what you were doing before your master's?
Yeah, I'm so sorry I can't hear you. I don't know why.
All right, okay. I wonder if we could try one of our other students then. Are we able to see if Anushka is able to hear? One moment. Hi,
Yeah, I can hear.
Anushka.
Yeah,
Lovely.
I can
Thank
hear.
you, Anushka. We're just having a few technical glitches, but that's okay. So, Anushka, are you able to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, what program you're studying, and what you were doing before your master's?
Okay. Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Anushka. I'm studying MSc in International Relations at the University of Glasgow. Before starting my masters, I was completing my bachelor's in international studies.
Lovely. Thank you for that, Anushka. Lovely introduction. And Liza, we'll try you again. Hopefully, you're able to hear. Are you able to hear now? Great, lovely. Are you able to introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from, what you're studying, and what you were doing before your master's?
Hi, yes, Gabby. Sorry about that, everyone. I was having some technical difficulties with this streaming. My name is Liza Malcolm, and I am a global health MSc candidate at the University of Glasgow. I'm from Savannah, Georgia, in the United States. And I was working at Planned Parenthood in the United States, which is a provider of reproductive health care.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Liza, and great to have you here now that we've resolved these issues. And Julia, do we have Julia?
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Julia. Nice to see you here. Are you able to introduce yourself and tell us what you're studying and what you were doing before your master's?
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Julia. I'm from Italy, from a small town in the north. And before coming to Glasgow, I was taking a year gap after graduating from my undergrad in anthropology. And I was studying Japanese in a language school in Japan.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think just before we get started with your experiences, Liza, are you able to tell us, what attracted you to study at the University of Glasgow and specifically the School of Social and Political Sciences?
Absolutely. I was initially interested in joining University of Glasgow in the School of Social and Political Sciences and the Global Health program specifically because I wanted a very interdisciplinary and mixed methods course. And I feel that with the core courses I had in my Global Health program, I was, educated on qualitative methods, quantitative methods. I learned about the combination of both. I learned about many different social science disciplines and how they relate to healthcare and health security and health equity. And it's just been a great pleasure to be exposed to things that are both quantitative and qualitative. And that's something that many programs don't have.
Lovely. Thank you for that, Liza. Okay, so we're ready to get started on your experiences then. So this is a question I'd love to ask all of you. The first question I have is, what do you wish you'd known before starting your master's program? And I'll begin with you, Anushka.
Hi. So before starting my master's programs, I was a bit worried as to how I would manage everything in a new academic and social environment. I wish I had known that everything would just be all right and I would be able to manage everything. And the university has enough support services in case you need them. So everything turns out just to be fine. So I wish I had known that so I wouldn't have worried a bit.
Lovely. That's an excellent tip for the students today. Thank you so much. And next, over to you, Julia.
So the thing that worried me the most before coming here was my background, because it's not directly politics, and the university system in Italy is very different from the UK. I was worried I would struggle to keep up with the courses and my classmates. And I wish I had known that the program is specifically structured to give you all the necessary knowledge you need in the first semester. And while I thought I would be the only one without an international relations background, in the end, I found out that all my classmates come from very diverse backgrounds, even cinematography. And I wish, same as Anushka, I had eased up a little bit at the beginning.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing that, Julia. And lastly, over to you, Liza.
Similar to my fellow students, Julia and Anushka, I think that it's really good to take advantage of all your academic resources on campus and the Student Learning and Development Center. The library has plenty of workshops and resources that you can take advantage of. And there's many workshops related to the dissertation that you can really immerse yourself in the first semester. And I wish I had taking greater advantage of that to prepare myself for where I am now. I'm currently, preparing for my dissertation's data collection, and there's many things that are posted to all students in the School of Social and Political Sciences via our email, and I think that it's good to read through those and see what might be relevant to you.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing that, Liza. Okay, so moving forward to when you first arrived in Glasgow, an exciting time for everyone. Liza, are you able to tell us about your experiences of first arriving in Glasgow? How did you settle in and make the most of Welcome and Induction Week?
Absolutely. I just tried to hit the ground running. I tried to take advantage of all the opportunities that came on my horizon. For my program specifically, there were many induction events that I could take advantage of. They were optional, so you didn't have to attend, but there was a scavenger hunt that was arranged by the conveners of my program, and it was at the Kelvingrove Museum, which, if you haven't heard of the Kelvingrove Museum, is a great place to visit near campus, has so much history and art. And it was so cool to get to know other international students and meet some of the professors that I was going to be working with. So there's going to be optional things that'll come on your horizon, and I think it's good to put yourself out there and just try to meet new people. All the Freshers Week activities are super fun. There's tabling for different societies, sports, anything that might be of interest to you. I decided to join 2 societies, and it's never been, something I've doubted for a second. It was a great way to meet people who are from many different programs. So I highly encourage you to, take time to explore things other than academics.
Lovely. Thank you, Liza. And Anushka, what were your first impressions of Glasgow and the campus when you arrived?
Oh, from the first day that I arrived in Glasgow, I was met with like utmost kindness. I've known people in Glasgow to be very friendly and kind. So the day I arrived in the welcome week, and there was a university volunteer at the airport who helped me with like finding a cab to my accommodation. And on the first day, I found that to be very helpful because I did not know anyone and I did not know how to figure those things out on the first day. So I found that to be very helpful. And when I visited campus, I got lost a couple of times and the walk felt like I was climbing a hill. But then at the end, when I like visited the university, I was like quite mesmerized by the architecture of it. And like till date, I'm like, whenever I visit the university, I'm like very amazed. And yeah.
That's lovely. Thank you. And how did you settle in socially? Were there any challenges like culture shock or homesickness? And did you use any of the university support services?
I've not felt homesickness just as yet because of like I've been settling it quite well. Because when I visit, like when I started university in the first week, there were like quite a lot of welcome events, and I attended quite a lot of those, which were arranged by a lot of student societies, and I met quite a nice group of friends there. So that's been helping me adapt here quite well. And I've not used any of the university services yet, but I know that they are available just in case I need them.
That's lovely. Thank you, Anushka. Okay, thank you. So moving forward to your first semester then, you've settled in and you've started first semester. Julia, thinking back to this time, can you share your experiences of settling in, particularly making friends, joining clubs and societies, and any highlights or challenges you experienced?
So for me, I'd say that moving to a shared accommodation was the most beautiful thing I could have done in finding friends, because all my flatmates are international students, and that is something that university accommodations tend to do. So to put together people who come from different countries and who are at the same level. So we're all master students. And because of that, we bonded quite quickly, and now we're all friends. And I was able to overcome the culture shock by exploring the city with them at first. And then I knew before coming to Glasgow that in the uni life, societies and clubs are a big part of the universities in the UK. So I joined two sports clubs. I joined horse riding and then mixed martial arts, MMA, and then the Japanese Society. So then I was able to meet so many different people, both from master's level and undergrad. And what I think is amazing is that each club's got their own social events weekly. So you're able to go out, have fun, and make many, many friends.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Julia. And Anushka, thinking back to semester one, academically, what was the biggest adjustment for you, and how did you manage the workload, including classes, readings, and deadlines?
Yeah, so actually, like one of the adjustment for me was to manage the amount of workload that was coming my way. So I realized that if I plan my week ahead, that would be like really helpful. And so if I started allocating a day or two, depending on like the volume of my readings, so that I could complete them like a week in advance, so that I don't end up completing them like a day before the class and end up missing them. So I found that to be quite useful in managing my time effectively. And the assessment deadlines are like mentioned to you like right in the first class. So that really helped me in planning ahead, and then I could manage the things.
That's lovely. Thank you. And Liza, over to you. Can you talk us through your first semester, including your experience of core courses and research or methods training?
Absolutely, I can answer that. So in the first semester, you're going to be exposed to some foundational skills and texts that will, serve you well for the duration of the program. In my Global Health MSc program, the core courses that I took exposed me to different research methods, as I mentioned before, qualitative and quantitative methods, but also intervention development and how to understand health from a sociological lens. And so I think the collision of those three courses really helped me to excel in my elective courses that I recently took in my second semester. And then I used some of the texts that I initially was exposed to in the first semester for my dissertation now, which is like just the whole point is that I'm able to use many of the materials that I had in my core courses to, sustain me throughout the whole program. And I think throughout the first semester, there is not like a high expectation of what you already know coming in. Kind of what my peers have mentioned is that there's not a lot of pressure that you have self-studied before you've entered the program. They will give you all of the skills and resources that you need to excel, regardless of your background before. I will say that for me, I did have exposure to qualitative methods prior to the course. but I think it's not a prerequisite to succeed in the course. And I think you will be able to, if you put in the effort and you try to coordinate with your professors, you will find much success.
Lovely. Thanks for that, Liza. Okay, and Julia, what was your experience of finding part-time work, and do you have any tips for the students?
So in my experience, part-time work is quite easy to find in Glasgow, especially in the West End, which is where the campus is located, because it's tailored around students. So there's cafes literally everywhere, restaurants everywhere. And throughout the whole academic year, I saw signs everywhere looking for part-time workers. So it is quite easy. And also, most students here have a part-time job. Then the university has its own part-time job hub, which is called the Students Opportunities Hub, where you can find roles and job posts only for University of Glasgow students. And that is, for example, where I found my student ambassadors role. My greatest tip I would give to you guys is to go to the careers fair. It takes place at the end of September, so right when you come to Glasgow, because there you can see the employers of restaurants and other companies around Glasgow who are looking for part-time workers at the moment. So you can directly talk to them, maybe share your CV, and that is super helpful. And then absolutely set up a bank account as soon as you come, because of course you're going to need a UK bank account. And the soon you set it up, of course, the soon you're going to start working without any problem.
Lovely. Thank you for that, Julia. Okay, so moving forward to second semester then. Julia, can you tell us about your transition to semester 2? You know, what felt different for you compared to semester 1?
So I'd say that the biggest difference is the atmosphere. Um, you've got the same feeling of excitement as when you start the classes in your first semester, but you've got a different mindset because you're more confident in the university structure and the assignments and what the professors are looking for you. So at the beginning, the first semester, you're very focused on understanding the types of assignments. I remember my first group project, I was quite confused on what it was required of me to do and on how to communicate with my classmates. While in the second semester, I knew how to do that already. So stress becomes much more manageable and you're able to focus on your assignments because you already know um, how much you can work per day and how many words you can write per day, for example, for your final essays. And the good part about the second semester is that now you have your elective courses, as Liza said before. So you become much more academically interested because you're focused on what interests you the most. And then towards the end of the second semester, you're gonna see a shift from your courses to your dissertation. So the more, as long as you complete the assignment, then you're gonna start thinking about your topic and your research methods. So that is gonna be quite a natural shift for you.
Lovely. Thanks for that. And Anushka, can you tell me how you found semester 2, including your electives, you know, any study trips, and maybe beginning to prepare for your dissertation?
Yeah, for me, semester 2 has been, to be honest, the most hectic and exciting at the same time. In semester 2, I could choose from a diverse set of electives, and I chose the electives that I was really interested in. I chose like 3 electives. I completed my electives in global development and human rights, conflict analysis, and gender, race, and IR. And I chose the electives I was really interested in it. So it helped me to be motivated and to complete all my readings, and I really enjoyed them. Semester 2 also gave me the opportunity to visit Brussels with my classmates for a study trip. So we visited some of the European institutions. We visited the European Parliament, the Council of Europe, and European External Action Service. So we visited quite a lot of like these institutions, and we learned about how they function in real life. And I found that to be quite fun and interesting. And I think this like whatever I learned will like really help me in my career.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Anushka. Okay, and Liza, how was your second semester? Can you tell us about any professional development activities, study trips, or preparing for your dissertation?
Absolutely. So semester two, as Julia and Anushka have said, is very different than semester one because you are much more confident in your own academic abilities and your own familiarity with campus and the various resources at your disposal. So I think that you're just in a stronger place in general. However, there is another level of stress that does arise because you know the dissertation is coming up. For my program, I had to submit a dissertation proposal in January. And I had to consider ethics for my project. So all these things are additional things that you will need to do on top of the elective courses that you're enrolled in. So there are many different academic expectations that you have that you didn't have in semester one. So I highly recommend that you read all of your got your workbooks for your various or your handbooks for your various courses, and that you really try to understand what the intended learning outcomes are for your courses, and that applies to what you did in your core courses in semester one. But that is how they will grade your assignments. So I've learned the hard way sometimes that I haven't done exactly what the ILO states, and you will have points deducted. So I would say being very familiar with that from the start is very helpful. And also, I recommend that you use feedback that you gain from professors in semester one to help guide how you create your work in semester two. Because I've looked back at feedback from previous assignments and I've used that to guide my work now. And I'm even going to use some of that feedback for my dissertation. So it all builds on each other. And I think that you should definitely take advantage of that. For professional development reasons, graduation is coming up sooner for us now. So looking at opportunities upon departure from campus is something that's more urgent. I would say that you, again, can expose yourself to the Student Opportunities Hub and various, job platforms across Glasgow. For me, I'm looking at positions that are more in like the voluntary sector with nonprofits and organizations. And there's many different websites that you can look at that, post upcoming jobs in various different fields. And so just becoming more familiar with those kind of databases and websites will set you up for success.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing that, Liza. So I think we've covered quite a lot, including the first semester and second semester. But before we move on to next steps and summer plans, I just wanted to ask you all this question. What's been the most rewarding aspects of your experience so far? It could be to do with teaching, coursework, projects, or, any opportunities offered by staff. So Julia, we'll begin with you.
So academically speaking, the most rewarding thing for me has been that now I can read the news and I can kind of get an idea of what's the decision-making process behind the political actions that are happening right now. My critical thinking has gotten much better, and now I can understand, I can get an idea list of what is motivating the current conflicts and of the decisions that certain politicians are taking. And then on a personal level, to me, the whole university experience in Glasgow has been amazing. Joining the clubs and developing my personal side and walking around the campus, beautiful campus. I'd say just come to Glasgow, it's beautiful.
Lovely. Thank you, Julia. And over to you, Anushka. What's been the most rewarding or enjoyable aspects of your experience so far?
To me, I think at this point, I would say that the whole program has been rewarding, to be honest. And like that's a broad thing to say, but I learned quite a lot of things when I arrived. I did not. I could broaden my knowledge of IR. I could learn new research skills. I found like I could learn how to write well academically. I found the feedback that I got on my essays to be very helpful to further better my academic writing skills. And I attended quite a lot of academic writing workshops at the beginning of the first semester. I found them to be very helpful as to understand what is expected of me at a master's level program. And then one of the most rewarding experience was, of course, like visiting Brussels for the my study trip. And yeah, it's been like
Lovely.
a really great.
Thank you, Anushka. And Liza?
It's really hard to say one thing. As you know, you have sense. There's lots of great things about being a master's student in Glasgow. I just love the city of Glasgow specifically. So I just think that it is brilliant to study in these programs, but you also get access to a great city. And I just had so much fun immersing myself in Glaswegian culture and Scottish culture. So it's really important to strike a balance between your studies and, just enjoying yourself, because we do spend a lot of time, in the library working on assignments. But the beauty of being an international student is that you can really experience another culture and learn about a whole national identity and a history, and it's really cool to do that. So I'd say that that's probably the most rewarding aspect for me.
Lovely. Thank you. And okay, so moving forward to next steps then and plans for summer. Julia, what do you have planned for over the next couple of months? Will you be focusing on your dissertation or professional development or travel or looking for jobs?
Well, so I think writing my dissertation is going to take a very big part of my summer, especially because I've decided to do focus groups as my research method. In particular, this is something that I think is very good of the University of Glasgow, that the professors really push you to produce your own research data. So I'm doing that. But then I didn't have much time to travel around Scotland during my semester because of all the classes, and I spent just lots of time in the library. So now that the good weather hopefully is coming, I would like to take the chance and maybe travel up north in the Highlands to see the beautiful landscape that this region has to offer.
That's lovely. Thank you, Julia. And Anushka, what do you have lined up?
I think, like Julia, I would also spend quite a lot of my time working on my dissertation, because right now I'm at a very preliminary stage in my dissertation, and there is a lot to complete. But if I do get the time, I would like to travel. I have not made any travel plans yet, but maybe I forgot to mention in the introduction, I'm from India. Maybe I would visit back home for a week or so if I get the chance to, and maybe I'd do that.
Lovely. Thanks, Anushka. And Liza, over to you. Any plans over the next few months?
Yeah, same as my peers. I will be working on the dissertation. I've started data collection now. I'm not doing focus groups, so kudos to you for that, Julia. I'm doing secondary data analysis, so I'm just looking at an existing data set and analyzing it. So it takes a little less ethical maneuvering, and it also takes less time and dedication to plan for that. So there's many different routes to take when you're planning your dissertation, but that's what I prefer to do due to the time constraints. But also included in my program is a trip to Geneva, Switzerland, to visit the World Health Organization. And I'm very excited to do that at the beginning of June with my peers. So if you are in global health, I believe there's things that are going to be changing about the program in general, but maybe that will be something you will have access to in the future too.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much today for sharing your experiences. I think it's now time that we can move on to the live Q&A. So if anyone from our audience has any questions for our panelists today, or for us as a school, feel free to ask them in the chat, and we'll go over to the live chat just now and see what kind of questions are there. Let me have a little look. Okay, so yeah, I'll have a little look in here and see what questions we have. Okay, so I believe a lot of the questions have been answered. If there's any more that come through. Okay, so there's a question here. How many students are usually on the MSc Global Security cohort? So that's a question for you, Julia.
So this year we're 39. I don't know about the previous years, but I think that is usually the average size of the master's programs here in Glasgow.
Okay, lovely. Going to see if there's any more that have come up. Okay. Okay, yep. Any more questions that come through, feel free to ask them. We can keep going with our chat with students. So, I mean, we'll go back to our students then if we don't have any live questions. You know, how did you prepare? How did you prepare for joining your master's program? Did you do anything like pre-reading or any tips for the students in terms of how to prepare and to feel a bit more prepared for joining? So we'll ask Liza.
So I was very eager to prepare as much as I could, but to be honest, there was no prescribed reading list prior to matriculating into the program. So even if I wanted to prepare, it was kind of hard for me to do that. I looked at the reading lists for the core courses I was going to be enrolled in from previous years, but I didn't know if that was going to be the updated list for my current year. So you can do that. So you can look back. I also watched some YouTube videos to kind of expose myself to the basics of social science research. So I highly recommend that maybe you just do a preliminary browse of those kind of things. I also highly recommend looking at various professors' profiles on the University of Glasgow website, because I wanted to know who are the various researchers in sociology, who are the various researchers who do research on reproductive health care, which is what I'm interested in. And I made a spreadsheet of all the different professors that, you know, did similar research to what I hope to do. And I kind of made a database for myself. So I highly recommend that you expose yourself just to the various faculty and what they research. And then maybe, depending on how your program is structured, maybe you could work with them for your dissertation.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Liza. And I think you know, I think there was a question about, you know, what should you do when you first land in Glasgow? So I believe I heard you talking about that, Julia, a wee bit, like you know, maybe finding a doctor or getting a phone. Oh no, it was a bank account. You mentioned setting up a bank account. So any kind of essential things that students should do, you know, when first landing in Glasgow.
Yeah, so I think the first immediate things I did were applying for the bank account, which was quite easy to me. It took only, I think, a few days before my bank account was opened. And then the GP, of course. So in the UK, healthcare is public. So you're gonna have to register to your own GP. And I recommend doing that immediately so that, you know, nothing happens. But if you need medicines from back home, you can just directly go to your GP whenever you want. I'd say these are the main things I did. And then, of course, I joined the international students panels to understand a bit more about the campus and how to navigate it, especially the library. The library is 12 floors, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember taking a library tour or a map so that I could understand a bit better how that worked.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much for sharing those tips. And there's been a few questions that have come in on accommodation. So obviously in terms of accommodation, you have two different choices. You can stay at our postgraduate residencies, which are all close distance to campus. These are our postgraduate accommodation. And we do have an online portal where you can apply. You know, applications are opened now for our residencies. And the other option is finding your own accommodation in Glasgow through a private landlord or letting agent, and or you know, room share, that kind of thing. And there's a question here for Julia. It asks, Julia, what accommodation do you where do you stay? So what accommodation option did you go with?
So I'm in United Students in Thursday Street. It's a private accommodation, but the contract is managed by the university, and it's quite convenient because it's only 10 minutes from campus. It's got the subway stop at just 1 minute, and I've got my own room with my own bathroom, so it's en suite, and then I share the kitchen with 5 other girls.
That's lovely. And does anyone, Liza or Anushka, did any of you go with the postgraduate residencies? No, private options. Okay, no problem. There was a question about how long to receive an accommodation offer after making a choice. I'm not too sure about that, actually. It might be best to speak to the accommodation services at the University of Glasgow. Yeah, but I know that, you know, if you're an international student and you apply before July, you are guaranteed accommodation. It might not be your first choice, however, you are guaranteed accommodation. But the best person to speak to would probably be the accommodation services about, you know, the time frame for hearing back on a decision about accommodation. Okay.
If I can jump in on that one, I
Yep.
think it took me only 1 month after selecting my offer to then receive the actual accommodation that I was going to stay in.
Okay, that's lovely. And Liza, can you tell us a little bit about private accommodation?
So I will preface this by saying that I actually arrived in Glasgow 2 months before most people do. I arrived in Glasgow in July because I was personally seeking a flat, a private flat in the West End area. And I would say that coming in earlier, you can kind of combat a bit of the competition that is always around Glasgow. It's very, very competitive to get a private flat through an agency with a private landlord. But I was able to secure that in near 15-minute walk from campus. And that was just a really lucky situation because most of the time when you apply for a flat, there's usually 9 other people who've also applied for it. But I was just the first person to put a deposit down, and I filled out the application in time. I had a guarantor in the UK, and that's something that's very hard for many international students to have. So I think that's what helped me get that. But I also considered postgraduate housing as well. I just unfortunately applied too late to get the one that I wanted most.
Thank you for that, Liza. Okay, and I think we'll wrap up with a final question. So, Anushka, what's you know, your favourite thing about Glasgow, and do you have a Scottish word that you love to use a lot?
Sorry, I couldn't hear your question. I know you asked me a question, but I couldn't
Sorry.
quite hear it.
The question is, what's your favourite thing about Glasgow, and do you have a Scottish word that you like to use a lot?
Okay. So I think my favorite thing about Glasgow is I live quite near to the park, Kelvin Grove Park. So it's really nice so that I can just like go for a walk, or I can like from my accommodation I can go through the park to the university, and I find that to be quite nice. And yeah, I have not yet learned any Scottish words yet, but I think I'll catch up.
No problem. Julia, do you have a favourite Scottish word?
Yeah, definitely it's Haya.
Oh, yeah. Okay, lovely. No problem. And how about you, Liza? Do you have a favourite thing about Glasgow, or a favourite Scottish word or Glaswegian word?
I love music, and so Glasgow is a world-class music destination. I highly recommend if you're into live music. It's just a great place to live. And my favorite Scottish word is probably dreekit. I think it means something about the rain.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, well, it was lovely to hear from you today about your experiences. I'm sure the students today listening in found that really helpful. So I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us. We're going to get finished and wrapped up now, but if you do have any questions, then please keep in touch, and we hope to welcome you to Glasgow at some point in the future. So thanks everyone for joining. Thank you and goodbye.